With Putin threatening British-linked ships, can London realistically fight back if Russia moves from warnings to actual seizures? Are 27 British-linked ships already on Moscow's radar, after Russia-tracked vessels sailing near the disputed Kuril Islands? Is Britain's navy caught unprepared with only 2 lightly armed patrol ships spread across the entire Indo-Pacific? Does Britain, which once ruled the waves, now need allies to help escort its commercial ships against a Russian threat? Has Putin's ship seizure threat exposed a major hole in Britain's naval power, as global commitments stretch the fleet thin? As the Russian Navy flexes its muscle, Britain fears it may lack the naval firepower needed to protect commercial shipping from a possible Russian seizure campaign. On August 12, Putin ordered Russian forces to prepare to inspect and detain European ships, framing the move as retaliation for Europe's crackdown on Russia's shadow oil fleet. The order came after Britain and European allies moved to board, detain and sanction tankers linked to Russian oil exports, which Moscow has described as piracy. A top Russian naval officer identified Britain as a possible target, suggesting Moscow could focus on states most closely associated with moves against its shadow fleet. Britain now fears Putin could seize cargo ships while the Royal Navy lacks sufficient firepower in distant waters, especially across the heavily contested Indo-Pacific. Moscow reportedly has data on 27 British-linked vessels that sailed near the Kuril Islands, where Russia's Pacific Fleet recently carried out major military exercises. British military planners are most worried about Russian seizures in the Indo-Pacific, where commercial traffic is vast but the Royal Navy's permanent presence is extremely limited. Britain has only 2 patrol ships deployed across the Indo-Pacific, according to the Telegraph, leaving a huge area of sea with little immediate British naval cover. HMS Tamar and HMS Spey are lightly armed river-class patrol vessels, built mainly for presence missions rather than direct combat against heavily armed Russian warships. Notably, Russia's Varyag cruiser also joined military drills off the Kuril Islands this week, giving Moscow a much more powerful naval platform near the routes of concern. Former Royal Navy head Admiral Lord West said, and I quote, "Our Navy has been reduced and reduced and reduced, and we do not have enough ships to fulfill our role to look after global shipping. It's extraordinary that successive governments have allowed us to reduce our Navy in such a way. The patrol ships are there to show a presence. But going back 30 years ago, there were 4 or 5 ships that would be steaming around here, not just 2. Unquote. Britain once planned to expand its military footprint through an Indo-Pacific tilt, projecting a more consistent regional presence. But the Russia-Ukraine war forced the Royal Navy to prioritize the North Atlantic and Arctic closer to home. Those competing missions have left fewer British assets available for the Indo-Pacific, even as Russia now signals it may use Pacific waters to retaliate against European shipping. 2 aircraft carriers remain in service, but they require major escort groups, maintenance periods and large crews before they can be deployed into a serious crisis. 6 destroyers remain in the Royal Navy's surface fleet, limiting Britain's ability to provide simultaneous missile defense, escort and global presence missions. 5 frigates remain after Type 23 retirements, creating a major gap until newer Type 26 and Type 31 warships arrive in sufficient numbers. 2 patrol ships operate in the Indo-Pacific, providing visibility and diplomatic presence but lacking the firepower to confront major Russian surface combatants. Most hunter-killer submarines are currently out of action, reducing Britain's ability to track Russian vessels and submarines far from home waters. 1 Vanguard nuclear submarine deploys at a time, maintaining Britain's continuous nuclear deterrent but unavailable for conventional maritime escort operations. Britain plans to build 8 Type 26 anti-submarine frigates, designed to track hostile submarines and protect carrier groups and commercial sea routes. 5 Type 31 general-purpose frigates are also planned, offering a more flexible and lower-cost platform for global patrols, escort duties and regional deployments. London has outlined a £298 billion defence investment over 4 years, although the pace of delivery will determine whether the Royal Navy can close its current capability gap. Defence spending is targeted to reach 3.5% of GDP by 2035, reflecting pressure to rebuild Britain's military amid threats from Russia and wider global instability. The government expects a new warship roughly every 9 months by 2029, but Britain's near-term fleet shortage remains a problem if tensions escalate sooner. British officials reportedly fear an unintended naval escalation could trigger a direct conflict with Russia, according to the Times. UK officials are reportedly urging military leaders to restore direct communication with their Russian counterparts to reduce the risk of miscalculation. Former UK Defence Chief Tony Radakin and his successor Richard Knighton reportedly sought contact with Russian General Valery Gerasimov. The UK and Russian defence ministers have had no direct contact since October 2022, highlighting the breakdown in military communication. Moscow has listed Britain among Western countries it considers unfriendly amid worsening relations over Ukraine. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in June that Moscow was not opposed to maintaining contact with any country. The Russian frigate Admiral Grigorovich fired warning shots near a British yacht in the English Channel, according to reports. Moscow and London said the warning shots were intended to prevent a possible collision rather than signal a direct confrontation. A UK-Russia military hotline remains operational despite the broader breakdown in direct communication between the two sides. Russia has accused Britain of worsening tensions by supporting the 2014 change of government in Kiev. Britain has become one of Ukraine's main military supporters since the conflict escalated in 2022. The UK has supplied Ukraine with Storm Shadow cruise missiles, which Kiev has used against Russian targets. The forces and units of the Pacific Fleet are on constant combat alert, carrying out their designated tasks, and are capable of ensuring the security of the Russian Federation in the Asia-Pacific region. The military-political situation in the region is tense and shows a steady trend towards escalation. The main factors driving the rise in military and political tensions are the destructive activities of Western countries aimed at reshaping the security architecture in the Asia-Pacific region, their build-up of an advanced military presence, and the creation of new military and political alliances under Western control. These include the AUKUS and Triple Alliance blocs. New alliances similar to these are currently being formed, namely JAFUS, Quad and AJUS. In effect, these are military-political alliances. They are essentially elements of NATO, merely under a different guise. They conduct joint operational combat training exercises, the number and scale of which are constantly increasing. There is a clear trend towards the involvement of NATO's military and political resources in regional politics within the Asia-Pacific region. The escalation of tensions in the fleet's area of operations is also confirmed by the increasingly aggressive actions of Japan's military and political leadership. For instance, on July 4, the White Paper on Japan's defense was published, setting out the military and political leadership's course towards open militarization. Russia is identified as one of the threats to Japan. It is also stated that military spending is to be increased to 2%. Furthermore, the Japanese defense minister, Shinjiro Koizumi, has openly declared that it would be appropriate to abolish the 3 non-nuclear principles, which is something that cannot be allowed in our region. Hearings are also being held on the revision of Article 9 of the Japanese Constitution and the establishment of the Japan Self-Defense Forces. A major concern is the threat of the West blocking Russia's maritime trade with the aim of inflicting maximum economic damage on the country. I am aware that, as part of the 21st package of anti-Russian sanctions, the European Union has lifted the previously imposed ban on the sale of Russian hydrocarbons within EU countries. This grants EU member states the right, at national level, to adopt legislative decisions regarding the sale of hydrocarbons from detained vessels of the so-called Russian shadow fleet. In doing so, the European Union is seeking to provide a legal justification for its actions, which contravene international norms. In accordance with your instructions, Comrade Supreme Commander-in-Chief, we have carried out a detailed analysis of maritime traffic in the Asia-Pacific region. We know the routes, what is being carried, and whose ships they are. In the exclusive economic zone of the Russian Federation alone, along the islands of the South Kuril Ridge, 1,001 vessels passed through between April 24 and August 6, 2026. Of these, 379 were flying the flags of unfriendly states, including 273 dry cargo ships and 71 tankers, amongst which were 26 British vessels and 9 French vessels. At the same time, Western states are actively using vessels flying the flags of third countries to transport cargo in their own interests. In essence, this constitutes their shadow fleet. We have the capabilities to inspect and detain vessels belonging to unfriendly states and their shadow fleet. Interagency cooperation is well organized. We are ready to begin tackling these tasks. The report is complete.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.